and they had a mass, um, uh, an, whatever they call it, uh, inoculation or
Mm-hmm.
something at the schoolhouse on Sunday, and we all had to go to be weighed, and then you got a dosage according to your weight, and that was on Sunday, and then Tuesday I had a fever. So they didn't know if the fact that I had had that vaccine helped to reduce the severity of the virus, or if I contracted it while I was in that
Mm-hmm.
long line of kids waiting for the
Wow.
vaccine. But
Mm-hmm. Okay. So now, what's going on these days with polio survivors? This is Polio Awareness Month, like I say, the October has been and is for a few more days. What's the message you're getting out there now?
well, for survivors, people are aging, and as you age, your muscles are not as strong as they had been. The ones that we learn to use in place of the ones that didn't function quite so well are being overused, and then the muscles through the years that
Mm-hmm.
were compensated for are also getting weaker. So our bodies actually physically are older than our years,
Mm-hmm.
just because of overuse of good muscles and the deterioration or the weakening of the already weakened muscles. But the fact that we are dealing with post polio syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
still there is polio in the world.
Yeah.
So we, as survivors, are also trying to raise awareness of polio in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
there's still 3 countries that it's not anywhere near eradicated. And India is considered eradicated, but they
Mm-hmm.
have to be polio free for a period of time, which they have not reached yet. So
Mm-hmm.
we're raising money for the vaccines for children in the countries that
Mm-hmm.
still have polio.
Okay. All right, Sandy.
Now you were telling me you were diagnosed at 10,
Yes.
and then you went on to elementary school, went on to college,
Yes.
became an RN.
Mm-hmm.
You just went on with your life. You didn't let this really stop
No.
you. Got married, had 4 wonderful children, and now you're just an advocate for the polio. And to say that it's a success story, even though you still have some issues with it.
Mm-hmm.
But aren't you glad that you did take the vaccine? That it only came to this point.
Yes,
And
yes, of course. And then my children, your children always complain about, oh, I don't want to take shots. And I could say to them, I know what happens when you
Mm-hmm.
don't get your vaccines, and you have to get your vaccines. Our orange, the post polio support group has an orange T-shirt that says polio is only a plane ride away. And with the close knit world that we have nowadays, if someone is not vaccinated, they can always ride to a country or
Mm-hmm.
to be in contact with somebody else who is not vaccinated, and they could contract polio. Even in the United States, there are those who don't, for whatever reason, get their vaccine. So.
I was going to, yeah, is that something that is still given to children these in the
Yes.
United States?
Yes.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah.
At what age do the kids?
Well, they
receive-
start the polio vaccine with their normal infant immunizations.
I see. Okay.
And so, 2 months,
And
6
that's-
months, and a year, or
and
something
that's
like
good
that. I've
for-
forgotten the
yeah.
rotation of those vaccines, but
Yeah.
but they get an initial series and then another booster at school age. So, if the people who, for whatever reason, don't take vaccines are still at risk,
Yeah.
considering that people fly from one place to another.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's such a small world now.
It is.
That it could be as you said, those T-shirts
Mm.
aptly, titled.
yeah.
It's just a plane right away. It could be brought into this country by any person from
That's true.
another country. So we certainly would want to see another epidemic to start. So you have folks out there, parents and guardians, make sure those children then are vaccinated. I did not realize that was not having kids myself, and I do have nieces and nephews and such, but I didn't know that was still given as part of their vaccines. Yeah.
Yeah.
As diverse as we are, and people that's coming from overseas over here, chances are they've not had the booster or the shots at all.
That's right.
So it's so important that we have them.
Yes.
Like we're supposed to have them. Now, after you become an adult, excuse me, do you have a vaccination then too?
I don't think they vaccinate for polio as an adult. Now, in recent years, they used to give tetanus and diphtheria as an adult. You should keep your tetanus shot up to date. And now they've incorporated the pertussis, which is for whooping cough, for adults. But I don't think they've incorporated polio again for adults.
Yeah. Now, polio back in the days of the polio epidemic, did it strike certain age groups? Were certain age groups kind of safe from it, or could it attack anyone?
Well, mostly children were attacked, but I went to the hospital in Asheville, and from Catawba County, I remember my mother saying, "Why can't she go to Gastonia? It would be closer." But Gastonia was full. So I went to Asheville, and I was 10, and in what we call the big girls ward, I was the youngest in the big girls ward. There was a lady who was probably in her 20s in that same ward, and most of the girls were older than I was, like 12, 15, 18 years old. But generally, polio affected children.
What about the most famous polio victim of all, the president, President Roosevelt? Yeah. Was he an older person when he
yes.
He wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it didn't really play favorites with any. It could attack anyone, but it was mainly children were susceptible to it. So those children now have grown up, like you say, and we talked about this before on the subject. Most of the folks who came through the polio epidemic and grew to adulthood, they went on to be very successful. They had a determination about them. Do you feel that's what helped you to be a more determined person?
Well, that's right. I was telling her, you do, once the initial phase has passed, you develop the muscles that you can develop. And so I walked for years and years without braces, and I did have surgery on one foot, and I remember telling the doctor, he was talking about the surgery he would do would lock the bone in that foot so that it wouldn't go too far down and trip me. And I said, now, I have to wear high heels. You have to leave me enough room to walk in high heels. So I wore high heels, and I did everything a normal teenager would do and went through college. And I was telling her I have come in contact with men who had polio who served in the armed forces. So you get past the initial illness, and you develop what you can, but then as we've gotten older, these muscles kind of have gotten tired.
Yeah. So there is a support group now, and you're part of a support group. Tell us how someone out there listening who doesn't know about this and is a polio survivor can get involved with one of these support groups.
Well, I don't know Janet Walker's phone number, but we do meet the third Monday of each month, and most of our meetings have been held in the large room at the Mayflower Seafood Place in Shelby. On 74.
Third Monday of each month. Okay.
And we've had speakers who talk to us about the proper use and how to obtain a wheelchair if we're if we need a wheelchair. We've had speakers who talk about pain management. We've had speakers who talk about orthotic, like braces, and now a lot of the bracing is plastic, very discreet. But if you need something to help you keep your foot up so that you walk better, orthotics that are available, and we share our stories, which, as I said, are quite varied. Most of us got past the initial illness and survived and got past polio, we thought. And now there are people who really spend their days, if they want to get out and about, in a wheelchair. And because the muscles are wearing out faster than I see people my age who are doing a lot of things I'd like to do, and I am really lucky. But you can always see somebody a little better. But there are those who are a lot more inhibited than I am. Physically.
Yeah. Sandy.
Well, you didn't let this diagnosis stop you, and
Oh no, and I don't think most of us did. I mean, you got past it and went on, and the men went into the armed forces, the women went into whatever careers they wanted to, and hiked and raised children. And
when you were diagnosed, you were 10 years old.
Yes.
Did you know what was happening? Were you scared? Did you know what could happen?
I don't think I had any idea of the long-term effects, but I know my mother did.
Yeah.
And she came home from work, and I had a fever, and she called the doctor, and they did a spinal tap. And I remember going home and putting on my Easter dress and not knowing that when I got to Asheville, they were going to burn that dress and those shoes. But in 1953, the ambulance was also the hearse. So when that vehicle pulled up to the house and they were going to bring that bed inside, I said, I'll walk out there. So I had to get in the ambulance and go to Asheville in the ambulance.
And how long were you in the hospital?
I was from July until the end of October.
Wow. For a 10-year-old, you've never been away from home, I imagine, in those days?
No, I hadn't. And parents were allowed to visit from 12 to 2, I think it was, every Sunday.
Yeah.
And some of the things that we have talked about at our post-polio support meeting is those who were babies at the time, you just don't know what the 8-month or 18-month-old is going through, but their mothers tell them how hard it was to leave their baby in the hospital and visit only once a week.
Yeah.
But for a 10-year-old, it was hard, but the ward was very disciplined. And of course they disciplined us physically. You had to lay there, and if you wanted to turn over, the nurse had to help you so that your feet stayed straight against the footboard rather than letting your foot drop and it would contract. So you had to, certain physical requirements were, and hot packs and pool therapy, and you finally worked up to your braces, and we were so proud to finally be fitted with braces, and you knew you were getting close to walking out of there. So they did the whole realm of taking care of the acute illness, but also the physical therapy that resulted.
Now, how do they know when you were at a certain stage where it wasn't going to progress any further? I mean, was there that call was made at some point?
I assume so.
Yeah.
The physical therapist worked with you every day, and so when you had progressed to a point where you weren't moving any farther, then they determined whether you needed a short brace or a long brace or a back brace or. But it was from the daily physical therapy.
Yeah. I guess while you were there, did you form friendships with other children that you stayed in touch with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For many years now, we've lost. We all got past polio, and so we kept in touch as teenagers, but then as adults, life takes over, and I lost contact with some of the people that I knew in the hospital. But we kind of pushed that behind us and
Yeah.
went on from there. And it wasn't really information that we shared on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
And I told her sometimes I would be working, and somebody would say, "Why are you limping?" And I'd say, "Oh, well, maybe I hurt my knee," or
Yeah.
and
There was, at the time, polio was, it was a feared. Some people feared, and
yeah,
you didn't want to feel like you were, people were afraid of you.
yes.
Yeah.
And as an adult, I remember getting some weird questions. Is that something your children will inherit, or it just so. Once I got past it, I was past it.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to go on with your life.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, you did that, Marcia, because you went to college, you became an RN, had 4 great children, I understand. Nice husband sitting over there.
Yeah.
So
And
you've done well.
we have 25, I believe, members who are post-polio survivors or polio survivors, and 11 caregivers, and of which my husband is one of those. And he has made the comment, this wasn't part of my job description. But years ago when I'd say, "Honey, can you reach that?" it was just because he was there and he could reach it. Well, now when I say, "Can you reach that?" he knows I can't go get the ladder and do it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where years ago I could have gotten the ladder and gotten up there myself, but now it's a little bit more than I do on a daily basis. So he's very kind to step in, and sometimes have been times when he said, "Don't even try it." But then, of course, I'm going to try. If I can do it, I'll do it. If I can't,
Yeah. Well, that's the determination, the will
Well, and that
to get.
determination is what have brought you this far, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, so October Polio Awareness
Polio
Month. and
Awareness
We're just
Month.
about through with October. We did want to keep the message out there, and that's something people could remember year round.
The
I'm
Rotary collects money year round, and the money that they collect for the eradication of polio is matched 2-to-1 by the Bill and Linda Gates Foundation. So if anybody wants to contribute to the Rotary, then they match, or as I said, Bill and Linda Gates match what the Rotary raises to eradicate polio. Each vaccine would cost 60 cents in Nigeria or Pakistan or Afghanistan. So they really work hard to raise money to supply the vaccine to these 3 countries that are still on the list for having polio.
Yeah, so it's still out there. That's
Yes.
something. Here in the United States, we tend to think, that polio is no more, but
Yeah.
Right.
we forget about the rest of the world. And as you said, it's the world getting smaller and smaller every day. We don't want it to ever be a problem here again by being brought in.
And
to
in
this
the
country.
United States, we were so fortunate to have doctors who said, "Well, here's the problem, how do we solve it?" But in these other countries, if a child has polio, they just live with whatever contractures or weaknesses or whatever they develop, and they don't have somebody who's going to work on their behalf to help them be productive adults. And so it's important to just eradicate the disease.
All right. Absolutely. Okay. Well, if anyone has any more questions or anything, I'm sure there's information available.
There was an article in the paper on October the 24th about our meeting this month, and as I said, we meet on the 3rd Monday of each month. And I don't have Janet Walker's phone number with me, but
But you meet at the Mayflower.
at the Mayflower,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll get, if if my number would be helpful, I'll give my number, and if anybody's interested,
If you want to.
704-538-3209,
Okay.
and I can give you information about our meeting, or if someone thinks they would like to join a support group. We met in October with the Asheville Land of the Sky support group. They have a very active group. So we share information and speakers and so forth. And I'm not sure about the other counties, but Cleveland County is quite active.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being with us today. All right, and that's your name again?
Marcia Sperling.
Marcia. I'm sorry. I looked at the board. It
I
said
didn't
Janet,
change-
but
yeah, I didn't
knew
get
it
the
wasn't
board
Janet.
changed.
Yeah.
All right, Marcia Sperling. Thank you very much for being with us today, and best wishes to you and
Thank
to
you.
everyone
Absolutely.
out
Thank
there.
you.
All right. Sandy, that'll wrap it up, I guess, for today. What about the program tomorrow?
Jackie Sibley will be here. Now, you talking about high heels. Now, she wears them, and they're pink. So, I'll tell you about it later. But then on Wednesday, Harriet Coffey from Charlotte will be in the studio with us.
All right. Well, folks, we hope you'll join us again then. We'll see you next time.
The most morning fun is right here.
It's great to wake up to in the morning.
I like the morning show.
WHS Shelby, WLON Lincoln, WCSL Cherryville Gastonia.
Here's what's up in Cleveland, Gaston, and Lincoln counties, brought to you by the What's Up Shopper and Big O Country, WOHS, WCSL, and WLON.